Hi, Charles of SirBookSage here, and this is week 3 of my 52-week-long Harry Potter First Time Reread series. I'm in the middle of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and today I'm discussing my thoughts of chapters 10 through 14. Now, before I begin, if this is your first time here and you're a fan of BookTube videos, if you're a fan of science fiction and fantasy, or Harry Potter in particular, and are interested in my 52-week-long reread of this series, click that subscribe button down below and a little bell icon notification if you want. And now let's dive right into the series here. Today's episode 3 covers 5 chapters, chapters 10 through 14. The first one here, chapter 10, is Halloween. And this is an important chapter, a critical chapter in the books. And we pick up right after Harry, Ron, Neville, and Hermione have discovered the three-headed dog, Hermione being the only one catching that it's guarding a trapdoor, and which sets in motion this kind of central mystery for this second half of the book. And it's interesting seeing the reaction of these four. Neville wants to never see the dog again, wants nothing to do with it. Hermione has no interest in what the dog might be guarding. She doesn't care what's in that trapdoor. She's just mad that Harry and Ron, being irresponsible, are getting them in trouble and risking them being expelled. So she just decides she's not going to talk to them for a while. That's her punishment, which them, being 2 11-year-old boys, are like, ooh, that's a relief. We don't have to have her nagging us all the time. And this is an interesting dynamic we see here, is we have Harry and Ron and Neville, to a degree, getting angry whenever Malfoy mistreats them and is mean to them. And then yet we have Ron in particular turns around and does it right back to Hermione here. So but that's part of being young and growing up and having the social interaction in school and life in general. Is hopefully you learn to catch these things, because Ron turns around and does to Hermione what Draco's doing to him that he gets so mad at, without thinking he's doing the same to Hermione. And for Hermione, it affects her deeply to the point where she runs off crying into the bathroom. We get our first holiday here, and it's Halloween. And it's a quick little mention. It's not really central to this story so much. We have the bats flying around. We get the kind of the description of the Great Hall in the first holiday. And in a quick little side thought here, I wonder if the mistreatment of the Dursleys, the way they mistreat Harry, if that has helped Harry transition into Hogwarts, perhaps a lot easier than he might have had he grown up with a normal kind of mundane muggle life. Is it harder to make that leap from your regular muggle life to Hogwarts? Because Harry spent, if he wasn't in school, he was in the cupboard under the stairs. So he has a lot less to unlearn, if you will. So I'm just kind of a little side tangent. I wonder if that's helped him ease into Hogwarts so smoothly here. Because there really isn't a lot of struggle for him, like suddenly being a wizard in a wizarding world. So just side thought. But the important part of this chapter really is the troll, the scene with the troll and Hermione and Ron and Harry. Now, this is important for multiple reasons. Harry realizes that he's not the only one interested in whatever that dog is guarding. Somebody else is, and somebody else wants it, to the point where they're going to unleash a troll and potentially get people killed to get at it. Because Harry realizes that this is a distraction. And he sees Snape going up to the 3rd floor rather than to the dungeon, which starts them down this path that Snape's a villain and Snape's trying to steal it. That's cemented a little later, in a chapter or 2 later, but the first inkling of it really starts to sit here. But we have Harry and Ron, who are really just, this is all a game to them, until this moment where they realize, and Ron as well, that his being mean to her out of spite and is put her life in danger. And they step up and do the right thing here, and they risk their own lives to make up for it and to protect her. And this is a fun scene in the movie, because you have the troll and he's like an idiot and the whole little fight scene. But I like the way it's written in the book better, because in the book, when the moment comes, Ron steps up and does the Wingardium Leviosa. In the movies, Hermione has to remind him again how to say it right and how to do it right. And I don't know why they made that change in the movie. Now that I've reread this, that little addition in the movie kind of annoys me, because I like the fact that when it really mattered, Ron steps up to the plate and performs and says it right without having to be reminded again. You don't need to make him like foolish. This is important for him to be able to step up and do what needs to be done. And I like the way Rowling wrote it. And again, quick scene, but this is the moment where then Hermione becomes part of this trio for real. Because the professors come in, they find them, and Hermione just flat out lies to McGonagall and the other professors that it was her fault. She went looking for the troll to protect them from getting in trouble. And this is the moment their core group is cemented, and they're inseparable now after this. So, and it's, again, a critical, important thing done in kind of a fun, but even scary way as well, because Hermione is terrified. She's petrified here in this scene. Unlike in the movie where she's like, basically, come on, Ron, do it right. So I like this much, much better, because this is a mountain troll that could rip these kids into little pieces, and it's terrifying in reality. But the whole purpose of that chapter is cementing Hermione in that core trio. And then, of course, chapter 11 and Quidditch. And my God, Quidditch is just a thing. Apparently, there are actual Quidditch clubs in the U.S. now. People play Quidditch with running around with broomsticks between their legs and play the actual game, which I've never watched anyone do it. It would probably seem a little comical and silly to me, but it does seem like a hell of a lot of fun. And I wonder would we have those clubs here in the U.S. of people playing this game if it wasn't for the movies? Would they have started these clubs if these had never been made into movies and they didn't get the stunning visual of the Quidditch matches particularly in this first film? Just curious. In this chapter here with the Quidditch match, we have a few things starting to take place. The next steps are being taken in these characters and in the plot. And Harry ends up seeing Snape's injured leg. When he goes, Snape had taken a book from him to punish him, because Snape can be an ass as well. And Harry just goes down to the teacher's lounge to get it back, stumbles in upon Filch bandaging up Snape, and Snape is furious here. And that's when Harry kind of makes the connection of where Snape was going and starts believing Snape is the bad guy here. And we also see Hermione emerging as a really good witch. She's already working spells with fire in particular and light, and she makes the paint on the big Harry Potter banner for the Quidditch match like change colors, and so she's already beginning to exert herself talent-wise. She's way ahead of the game in terms of Harry or Ron at this point. I mean, Harry has natural ability as well, but Hermione does the hard work to turn that natural ability into results. And right now, Harry and Ron are just, they wouldn't make it through the semester without her help. And she doesn't do their work for them, but she goes over it enough to help them get the answers. So, I mean, she's really critical to them even getting through school at this point. And because it's still, even with the troll, not really that serious, not really, really, really real yet to them. But this is where it begins to start to become real. And that's in the match, the broom is enchanted, and Hermione is the one thinking fast. Everyone's like, oh my God, look at Harry. And Hermione's the only one, grabs the binoculars, and she's looking through the crowd because she knows someone's casting a spell. Sees Snape mumbling, clearly he's doing a spell. And then she jets off, sneaks up around behind him. And I like the way Rowling does this, because just kind of thrown in there as a little comedic moment is she knocks Quirrell basically on his face to like get past him to get at Snape. And it's just kind of slipped in there, and you don't really pay any attention to it. I probably didn't catch it at first. I probably just laughed at Quirrell. Quirrell's just this kind of, nervous little like ninny or whatever. But it's again Rowling putting those pieces in place, and you don't see them until the end. And now I see them, that they're obvious things now during the reread, because you know what happens. But I like that she made sure to take the time to give us those hints. Because when an author does a big twist reveal at the end without those little pieces being there, then it's kind of a cheat. But Rowling really does a good job of taking the time to build those little moments in to plant the seed in your head. So when the reveal does finally come, it's a surprise and a good surprise, but your brain accepts that it works because it might know subconsciously those pieces, oh yes, click, 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 even though if you don't consciously know it yet, but you get it with the reread. And now and Hermione sets, Snape's sort of robes temporarily on fire. So even Hermione believes that Snape is trying to kill Harry. And one thing I also realized, and a big difference between the movies, is in the movies, a running gag with Hagrid is, oh, I shouldn't have told you that. I shouldn't have said that. He says that multiple times in the movie, but he doesn't really do that in the book until we get to the end of chapter 11 here, where he lets slip the name of Nicolas Flamel, which then gives them their next piece of the puzzle of what's under that trapdoor. And they know now Flamel is involved and connected in some way. And this now moves the story forward even more into these last 2 chapters, or last 3 more chapters here. Because now we get into chapter 12, the Mirror of Erised, and this is a really interesting chapter. First off, we get Christmas at Hogwarts. And the Weasleys are staying, and Harry's staying. Hermione's going back home to be here with her family. But since the Weasleys' parents are going to see, I think, Ron or Charlie in Romania, all the rest of the Weasleys stay here, and Harry gets his Christmas presents. But before that happens, though, they're in hot pursuit of trying to find out who Nicolas Flamel is. Now, Ron knows he's heard the name before, and I think Harry kind of knows he's heard the name before. And this is a little callback to chapter 6 on the journey from Platform 9 3/4, where Harry gets his first trading card, and it's Dumbledore, and which is where the name is. But they can't remember that at this point. But now you see why that card was put where it was all the way in chapter 6, and Nicolas Flamel's name was on that card. Though you won't learn that here for another chapter. And now here's one thing this one silly little thing, but this is how my brain works. Why isn't there a spell where you can walk into the Hogwarts library and, hey, run a spell that says, give me every book with Nicolas Flamel's name in it, and the books fly off the shelf and come to you? Now, if I'm the librarian in that library, I'd want a spell like that. Because if someone comes to me, a student comes to me and is like, I need to study this subject, you can flick your wand and every book on that subject popped right over to your desk. But maybe that spell doesn't exist, or if it does, maybe the kids don't know about it. Though Hermione strikes me as the kind of student who would have found it if it existed. So I'm just going to assume such a spell doesn't exist. It would make things a hell of a lot easier, but then the whole point of the book is that it's a mystery and it's difficult to figure out. Total side note, but that's just kind of me. It's like, well, why isn't there a spell that does that? That seems an obvious spell someone should come up with, especially a librarian in Hogwarts. We also get some more really important things happen here, and wizard's chess is introduced. And here we finally have Ron's specialty. Ron's better at it than Harry, Ron's better at it than Hermione, Ron's better at it than anybody, Neville, anybody else. This is Ron's thing, which of course becomes critical in the climax of the story. But it's nice to see Ron have his moment here of something he's naturally good at. And great foreshadowing as well, and to lay this foundation for the book later in the book. Because if it had just popped up at the end and Ron's like, yeah, I'm good at that, again, it would have been cheating. So I like that she's now starting to put these pieces into place, because she's running out of time before she has to have them in place before she gets to the finale. So these chapters are a lot of setting those final things in place here before we move to the climax. And we get all the Weasley sweaters. I love the little scene with the Weasleys here on Christmas, where even Percy shows up and Fred and George force the sweater on him, and they're all hanging out together and spending Christmas together. And for Harry, he's never really had a Christmas before because of the Dursleys and how just really vile they can be. But most important, Harry gets the invisibility cloak, and he learns it's from his dad. And he doesn't know yet who gave it to him for Christmas at this point. But this is, again, an important, critical thing to the entire story. For now, here at the beginning, it's a nice, convenient tool to use to sneak around. And here we have, again, a mechanism that Rowling uses in the story where Harry's off trying to do something, ends up almost getting caught, and then in trying to flee, he ends up stumbling across something important. They did this with the three-headed dog earlier, and Harry now does it this time with where he discovers the Mirror of Erised, which also becomes a critical piece of the climax. And I completely forgot here in the book how Harry sees his whole family, not just his mother and father, but his all his whole extended Potter family. So I like that was all of them you get to see in the mirror. I guess I understand for the movie they just want to focus mainly on him and the connection to the mother and father, the parents. But I like that in the book it's all of them, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, or all the Potters. And it's really interesting here because this is a powerful and dangerous mirror. And just looking at it into one time, already thoughts of Flamel and the trapdoor and the dog and what's guarding are already begin to slide away from Harry's thoughts, and he just starts obsessing over this mirror, and quickly too. That's how powerful this thing is. But I guess to be shown your deepest desire like that is intoxicating. And for Harry, if it being particularly his lost family he never knew, that's a really, really difficult thing for him to turn away from. And of course Ron, we get to see Ron wanting to be the greatest of the Weasleys and him seeing himself that way. And then Ron and Harry start fighting even over looking in the mirror. They both want their time. And you see more of its dangers, that it could pit even best friends against each other. And then the important part here, and this is to me a critical piece, in that Dumbledore actively steps in. Because Harry's come up against something Harry's not ready for. Harry can't combat on his own. And here we have Dumbledore taking an active role once more in Harry and making sure that Harry's protected and pushes Harry back in the right direction. And then tells him he's going to hide the mirror. And we get that silly mask Dumbledore's wearing for most of this book comes off here because Dumbledore isn't mean about it. He's not harsh or forceful about it. He does it with such kindness for Harry. I really like it. Dumbledore as a character, this is an important moment in the book for me. Because other than the beginning, he's just doing silly things, kind of in the background in the story. And here's him you realize he's paying attention to what's going on. He might even be one of these chess masters maneuvering pieces. And he was smart enough to recognize that Harry's overwhelmed here and needs help. So he steps in and does what needs to be done. It's a nice moment of their bond and friendship that continues to grow from here. This is because Dumbledore has to kind of take a role here and there, and this is his first time stepping into the action for Harry, to help Harry. And then we get chapter 13, Nicolas Flamel. And here's another little piece, and this is the way I look at it, is they're stuck. They can't remember who Flamel is. They can't figure out why they can't find him. There's something missing that's getting in their way. And along comes Neville Longbottom once again. And Neville his legs are frozen together by Malfoy being just, really annoying. And he's all upset. and they help him, and then Harry gives him his last chocolate frog. And in the trading card, Neville gives back because he knows Harry collects them, and that's Dumbledore's card. And that's when the memory's triggered, and he turns it over, and there's Nicolas Flamel, the Sorcerer's Stone. And again, I like that Rowling makes sure that it's Neville that steps in, because he's that fourth piece, even though he's mostly in their orbit. When needed, he steps in, and like things click into place, and they're able to take that next step. And I'm reminded here of kind of Stephen King's It. And in that book, you have all the kids, and they're maneuvered by events, by mystical forces, whatever it is, to one by one click into place through a series of different events where they end up in the right place at the right time and click into place so that things are where they need to be for this confrontation. And that's part of what we're getting in this first book here with Ron and Harry, and then Ron, Harry, and Hermione. And then when needed, Neville steps in and gives that fourth piece that they found the dog and the trapdoor with Neville. And now they've figured out who Nicolas Flamel is with Neville. So Neville just kind of stops being comic relief and orbiting around them, clicks in the spot for a moment for them to move forward, and then Neville goes back to his kind of tangential role. And whether that's intentional on Rowling's part, deliberately, or it just worked out that way for her as she developed who Neville would become, I mean, I'm assuming this is all kind of planned by her. But we also get our second Quidditch match, which is really quick, blistering fast. It's 5 minutes, Harry captures the snitch, but important that we have Ron and Neville stand up to Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle and actually get into a fist fight, the 5 of them. And Hermione is oblivious. She's just super excited that Harry's won. But that whole Quidditch match is really just window dressing to get us to the finale of this chapter, where it's later in the evening. Harry's going to put his broom away, and apparently all the brooms are kept in some broom location. And he sees Snape sneaking out into the Forbidden Forest and follows him on his broom. And again, here we have Harry just off into the Forbidden Forest, not thinking, not worrying about the rules. But he sees Snape arguing with Quirrell about Fluffy, the dog, whose they've learned is named Fluffy. Or I don't know, or maybe they learn his name in the next book, next chapter, I can't remember. But you learn that there's spells also guarding the Sorcerer's Stone. And then the plot misdirect is now set, because Harry is convinced absolutely 100% Snape's trying to steal it, Quirrell's trying to protect it, and that's what that confrontation was about in his eyes. An important moment, and again, the big misdirect is now firmly in place. That's going to lead these kids down what they think is the right path when it's actually the wrong path. And then we get to the final chapter of today's read, and that is Norbert the Norwegian Ridgeback, chapter 14. Now, I completely forgot that they spent an entire chapter on little Norbert. Because in the movie, the egg hatches, there's Norbert there, he's got the little moment, and Malfoy sees them, and then they get in trouble. But in here, it's an entire chapter of Norbert. Hagrid having the egg, him eventually hatching, this thing starting to grow and grow and grow, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione trying to just kind of keep everything on the down low and keep nobody noticing. And their insistence to Hagrid as well that Snape's a villain and Snape's trying to steal the stone, and Hagrid kind of getting mad at them. It's like, lay off of Snape. You don't understand. He's protecting it. And they won't listen because they're 11-year-old stubborn kids. They think they're smarter. They think they're smarter than Hagrid. And they gloss over realizing that Hagrid was around for all this stuff. He's seen firsthand. He kind of knows a lot more than he lets on. But also the daring plot to sneak Norbert out with Charlie's friends coming to take him in the middle of the night. Malfoy trying to get them caught. Malfoy's backfiring and getting himself caught. But then at the end of the chapter here, they've whisked the dragons gone away. They've outwitted Malfoy. They're happy. And then they get careless, and Filch catches them out in the hall at night. And that's where the chapter ends. And I didn't want to stop reading because there's 3 chapters left now, the finale of the book. But that's going to be next Sunday. And I'm really looking forward to it. This has been a really fun reread. It's nice to go back through and take my time with this book. I'm really, really excited to be getting into the next one. I can't wait to get to Azkaban in particular. From my original read, that's my favorite of the 7 books. So I'm really curious how these books are going to end up ranking for me once I'm done with this whole reread next October. And that's pretty much it. I guess a lot less happened overall, but critical things happened here than happened in the last set of chapters I read last week. Again, this is going to be a 52-week long series. Every Sunday I'm reading Harry Potter chapters, roughly somewhere between 70 and 80 pages each Sunday. And before I go, next week's read is going to be the last 3 chapters of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It is going to be The Forbidden Forest, Through the Trapdoor, and The Man with Two Faces. And that will close out this first book. So I hope you find these talks interesting. Let me know down below what you thought of this particular section of the book, of these particular events, of what my kind of thoughts and interpretations of them are. Again, I want to hear feedback from you guys of what you thought about this first book. And if you've gone back and done a reread recently, how does the book feel to you in comparison to like your original read or 2 of it? Because this is a completely different experience from my first time reading, because I read through them so quickly. So, and I'm enjoying this quite a lot. But anyway, I don't want to ramble on. Again, next week, chapters 15, 16, and 17 to finish off the book. And till then, I am Charles of SirBookSage, and happy reading.